Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Clément Aubin, and I'm very happy to give this talk, which is entitled On the Challenges of Migrating Knowledge Across Software Platforms at OW2Con 221. Let's dive right in. We only have 15 minutes. So today I would like to tackle this problem in 4 different parts, basically. The first one being providing a bit of context about knowledge and knowledge solutions in general and how they work. And then I would like to also discuss a bit about migration methodologies, particularly when you try to migrate from one knowledge base to another. And here I will use the case of what we do at in my company, which is XWiki SaaS, for migrating users from Confluence to XWiki. Then I'm going to describe a bit also how we handle specific features that may be in knowledge bases, for example, extensions, which can be proved to be particularly difficult to migrate. And finally, I would like to open on open standards, which could be interesting to develop in this field, which is something that we lack. So, just before we start, who am I? My name is Clément Aubin. I'm an account manager at XWiki SaaS. So XWiki SaaS, we are a software editor. We develop 2 open source software, which is XWiki, which is a wiki-based knowledge management software, and CryptPad. CryptPad, you can see it kind of as an alternative to things such as Google Drive, but end-to-end encrypted. Going back on my side, I'm mostly passionate about open source. You can find me on different projects, so XWiki, of course, OpenFoodFacts or FOSDEM, and if you want to contact me, you have my email. So, how do we manipulate knowledge today? Well, so today, you and I will both work in environments that are very probably knowledge heavy, meaning that there is information everywhere. When you wake up in the morning, you will look at the news and maybe open up your emails, check the company chats, and then maybe continue writing this report that you started last evening. So you will write it maybe in a wiki, or you will write it on some drive that you have, for example, and then you will have to send it back to your client. And so what's interesting is that every single one of these actions will leverage some kind of knowledge that you will have access to. This knowledge is scattered everywhere. So in the emails, you will have the communication with your client. Then in this report, you will have the content of the report itself, and it's really hosted in 2 different platforms. And so in order to access these different platforms, you will go through kind of a tool. It could be your mail client. It could be the UI of the drive that you are using to edit your report. And so here I have listed a bit the kind of the solutions that you may use. And when you are using these solutions, you will tend to actually do what's intended for the solution, but you may also start using a set of tools that are embedded within the solution, but that are not really like, for example, if I give you an example, when you are writing an email using Gmail, for example, you have this kind of features that allows you to end automatically your sentences. And so while using this tool, you are using an extra feature that is provided by the mail client. That is not really the core need of a mail client, but that is that kind of small little thing that adds really a main differentiator. And what's interesting is that going more in depth on this subject, when you will be using tools to set your knowledge, so for example chats, if you want to discuss with your team members, you will tend to use these small features of the tool in order to format your knowledge in a certain way. So chats, for example, you could have a solution that uses threads, which is a specific type of chat. Or maybe if you are using a documentation platform such as Confluence and XWiki, you may use, for example, macros, which you can use in documents to create some generic content. And so, to be clear, this is really something that we will see both in open source and proprietary software, and it's really fine because that's what actually gives kind of a main differentiator to your solution, and that's probably what will allow you or your team to choose it compared to others. And so, well, it's good to have these features, but in the meantime, whenever you want to migrate, you will also have to leverage them, meaning that you will need to find equivalence from the platform that you are migrating to the target platform that you want to have. So we'll go back on this subject actually when we will discuss about extensions a bit more in depth. Now I want to discuss about how we usually migrate from one knowledge base to another, and here I will take the example of what we do as part of XWiki SaaS when migrating users, for example, from Confluence to XWiki or from any other solution to XWiki. So to give you a bit of context, I'm going to actually use quite a lot the example of Confluence, because in last October, Atlassian, which is the editor of Confluence, did a significant update to its pricing model, which is basically, well, almost killing the prices for on-premise licenses. If you are a team of 20 people and you want to have a Confluence hosted on your premise, you will have to pay around $2,500, which is not that accessible for a small company. And so this has raised concerns, of course, especially for small and middle companies, where the switch to cloud is not really wanted. They don't want to have their Confluence on the cloud. They want to have it on premise, maybe to keep control of their data, maybe because they want some kind of protection. And so this company basically started looking maybe for alternatives to Confluence, and maybe they ended up calling us because we have a pretty good support for migrating off of Confluence to XWiki. And when we are looking at the content migration, so could it be from Confluence or from something else, we usually have like 3 different steps on which we can approach a migration. The first step would be to basically do what we call a raw text import. So consider it basically as to me, I see it more as a huge copy paste of the current knowledge base that you have, and the target to the target knowledge base that you are trying to get. So you may copy the data of the documents, but maybe you will lose some metadata. You will especially lose potentially some formatting which is not supported. And one of the issues with this text import option is that you will also have some users which already have the burden of migrating from one tool to another, and it means also changing a bit the way they work and adapting to the new tool, which will also in the meantime have to deal with this loss of metadata for the documents and the information that is being migrated. So it's an additional burden. Fortunately today we tend to have this less and less, mostly because we tend to have more and more either a small API access or the possibility to export at least the general information of a knowledge base when we migrate it. Second option is really when you have you have the possibility to export a set of metadata that is related to all the documents that you have in your knowledge base, and you will actually configure the target knowledge base to actually take this metadata and import it, take it into account. We usually call that batch import in XWiki because we have a tool that is actually designed to do this kind of imports. So it usually looks like having a CSV on the side that will contain all your metadata, and then next to it you will have also other files which will describe a bit the documentation that you are trying to import. So quite interesting. Usually you won't get you may lose some information because it's a method that is fairly generic, and so if you have a platform that is that comes with a set of very specific features, it can be difficult to tune so that you don't lose anything during this batch import. And finally, there is one last solution, which is kind of the Rolls-Royce of the import. It's where you lose almost no data. You keep the formatting of your pages. You keep all the, maybe in the case of knowledge bases, for example, in the case of wikis, you will have some documents which will have history, and you will keep all the history. And so this method will basically use a backup of the old instance, maybe a database dump or a specific backup format, or just plug into the API of the platform in order to do the import. And so this is usually the best solution. The main issue is that it's actually a solution that is very specific. It's not something that you can do for different types of knowledge base at the time. But even with this last option, there are some limits basically, and the limits come from any kind of extensions or additional plugin or feature that you may have put in your knowledge base. So remember, we talked about that in the first slide. And nowadays we see more and more tools that will provide a marketplace for extensions that will allow you to better arrange your content. In the case of a wiki, as I said, it can be, for example, macros, which will allow you to actually display them, display some content in a certain way, provide some dashboards and things like that. And it's really super useful for organizing the content itself. It makes a great experience, and I feel like it's really a good opportunity for knowledge bases to use macros or similar tools. But in the meantime, it will cause some issues during the migration, because you will have to find some equivalents of these macros in the new platform. And so sometimes there is no equivalent, and you need to develop one, which is costly. Or sometimes there is also an equivalent that exists. However, it's an equivalent that is basically limited, or that works differently maybe, and you will have to tune your importer in order to make sure that the content that you import fits correctly, and you don't lose anything with your macros. What we usually do, for example, for this solution, at XWiki, what we did is that we created an open source migrator to take data from Confluence and migrate it to XWiki. And what we are doing also is, whenever we have a client that wants to migrate and it has some macros from Confluence that are not 100% compatible at first with XWiki, we will propose them to actually take these macros, do kind of a conversion, and we put this conversion as open source so that it can be reused in later projects. And that way, your migrator grows and grows with the time. So finally, and I will be very quick because I only have 2 minutes left. What we are missing today is really standards for easing the data exchange across knowledge bases. We really have none, but in the meantime, if you look at other kind of knowledge management software, I'm thinking mostly about chats, for example, maybe emails, or maybe just a document platform, so Drive and things like that. There is already a standard. So for documents, it will be ODT or DocX maybe, where you can move your files. When you want to migrate from chats, or when you want to build two platforms between each other, for example, you can do bridges with Matrix. So nowadays it's possible. But for knowledge management softwares, such as, for example, wikis or maybe CMS, we are missing these tools. And the main issue is that actually, in order to develop them, you need some time. It will also not benefit the providers that want to have lock-in with the solution. And so, to me, that's why we are missing kind of this open standard. So that's the end of my talk. I hope that it was very useful for at least some of you. And if you have any question, maybe we have some time to take them. So thank you. Bye.